Good morning, dear friends. Today we will discuss clinical features of carcinoma stomach. Majority of patients with gastric adenocarcinoma have advanced disease at diagnosis. Most patients with gastric adenocarcinoma are symptomatic. However, early is diagnosed only in countries which perform screening endoscopy, and those countries are Korea and Japan. Among patients with early gastric cancer, 70% of patients have uncomplicated dyspepsia. So they do not have weight loss, anemia, or dysphagia. They just have symptoms of uncomplicated dyspepsia. Another thing we need to understand is treatment with anti-secretory drugs, proton pump inhibitors, may delay the diagnosis or result in misdiagnosis on first endoscopy. So widespread use of proton pump inhibitors can delay the diagnosis of early gastric cancer. Coming to the most common symptom of any patient with gastric adenocarcinoma, since uh, many patients are diagnosed at an advanced stage, most of the patients are symptomatic, and the most common symptoms are weight loss and persistent abdominal pain. So, what are the causes of weight loss in a patient with carcinoma stomach? They can have weight loss due to inadequate oral intake. There can be nausea, anorexia, and early satiety. Some patients have pain abdomen resulting in poor intake and weight loss. Patients with proximal gastric cancers can have dysphagia, and gastric adenocarcinoma in general can result in increased catabolism and cachexia. What are the causes of pain abdomen in any patient with carcinoma stomach, and how is it characterized? The patients will have an epigastric pain, which is generally vague. In a patient with the early disease, it will be a mild and intermittent pain. In a patient with advanced disease, it becomes a severe and constant pain. Dysphagia in carcinoma stomach can occur in a patient with proximal gastric cancer or a gastroesophageal junction tumor. One uncommon but peculiar presentation is pseudoachalasia. This is nothing but presentation with a clinical and manometric features similar to idiopathic achalasia. However, contrary to idiopathic achalasia, the patient will have some other reason causing pseudoachalasia. In this particular situation, a malignancy can cause an achalasia-like presentation that is called pseudoachalasia, and 70% of the time it is either due to a primary malignancy at the GE junction or proximal stomach, or a secondary malignancy, rarely causing direct partial obstruction at the level of GE junction. Theories like malignant infiltration of Auerbach's plexus causing pseudoachalasia or achalasia-like presentation is less common compared to actual disease infiltrating the GE junction. So how to distinguish achalasia from pseudoachalasia? So any patient presenting with achalasia with the following four factors: advanced age, shorter duration of symptoms, weight loss, and difficulty in passing the scope beyond esophagogastric junction, needs further investigation to rule out pseudoachalasia. Because in a typical achalasia, which is an idiopathic one, it usually occurs in an younger age group between 20 to 30 years, and they generally tend to have a long duration of symptoms. Weight loss is less common, and whenever the endoscopist performs the scope, he will be able to easily pass through the GE junction, albeit with a small snap. So if you have all these features and at least more than two of the above features are fulfilled, we need to do further investigations like an endoscopic ultrasound or a contrast CT of the abdomen and thorax to rule out pseudoachalasia. Nausea and vomiting in patients with gastric adenocarcinoma. Distal gastric cancer, as you all know, can present with gastric outlet obstruction symptoms, resulting in nausea and vomiting, vomiting of undigested food particles, associated with weight loss is a common presentation in patients with distal gastric cancer. Sometimes a Lineitis plastica type gastric cancer can result in vomiting and nausea due to poor distensibility of the stomach due to tumor infiltration. Can patients with gastric adenocarcinoma present with bleeding? Yes, up to 30% of patients with gastric adenocarcinoma have anemia. It can be due to an overt bleed or an occult GI bleed. One-fifth of patients present with overt bleed in the form of hematemesis or melena. Occult bleed is, however, more common, and patients can present with iron deficiency anemia. An elderly male who presents with an unexplained iron deficiency anemia, we need to do an endoscopy to rule out upper GI malignancy, especially gastric adenocarcinoma. Another thing to note is both early and advanced gastric cancer can present with GI bleed. It is not that only advanced cancers present with bleed. From a therapeutic standpoint, we need to understand that proximal gastric adenocarcinoma, the bleed is usually from the left gastric artery, while distal gastric adenocarcinoma, the bleed is usually from the right gastric or gastroepiploic artery. What are the causes of GI bleed in a patient with gastric cancer? Generally, it is due to an increase in size of the tumor, resulting in increased insufficient blood supply to the center of the tumor. There can be softening, necrosis, and ulceration of the tumor, resulting in bleeding from the surface of the tumor. Sometimes small and medium blood vessels which are on the surface or within the tissue of the tumor can rupture and result in bleed. We need to understand the pattern of metastasis in patients with gastric cancer before we examine the patient with gastric cancer. So, up to 50% of the patient with gastric cancer metastasis, the most common site is metastasis to the liver. Up to 50% metastasis to the liver. 30 to 32% metastasis to the peritoneum, 15% to the lung, and 12% to the bone. Knowing this will help us in doing a systematic examination of a patient with gastric adenocarcinoma. So you have a patient with a suspected gastric adenocarcinoma and you need to examine the abdomen. Generally, in a patient with gastric adenocarcinoma who has a palpable mass, it indicates that the disease is locally advanced. The mass is usually in the right upper quadrant. It can be mobile or fixed depending on the infiltration to the retroperitoneal structures like pancreas, and the mass generally moves with respiration. Other findings on abdominal examination can be an ascites due to a peritoneal carcinomatosis. Rarely there can be an periumbilical nodule which is called the Sister Mary Joseph nodule. Very rarely lower abdominal mass can be a presentation which can be an underlying Krukenberg tumor. Rectal examination is mandatory in any patient with gastric cancer where you can see pelvic deposits, the so-called Blummer self metastasis. A word about Sister Mary Joseph nodule. It was first described by Professor William Mayo. Sister Mary Joseph was originally an assistant of Professor William Mayo, and she was the first one to recognize this condition. This particular nodule is actually nothing but an umbilical metastasis. The cancer cells spread to the umbilicus and the periumbilical tissue through a lymphatic hematogenous or a contiguous pathway via the embryologic remnants of the anterior abdominal wall, which presents as a nodule. The nodule can be a hard nodule or it can be an ulcerated nodule, which is termed the Sister Mary Joseph nodule. 50% of the time it is due to a gastrointestinal tract cancer. Not only carcinoma stomach, any other GI cancer can present with a gastric Sister Mary Joseph nodule, and a fourth of them may be due to an advanced gynecological malignancy. Generally, Sister Mary Joseph nodule indicates an advanced malignancy. Lymph nodes in carcinoma stomach, of course, we cannot palpate an intra-abdominal lymph node, but a distant lymph node like a palpable left supraclavicular node, which is called the virchotracheal node. It is one of the most common findings in patients with metastatic cancer stomach. So whenever we examine the abdomen, we need to examine the neck for the nodes in the neck which can represent a metastatic node. Very, very rarely there can be a left axillary node which is called an iris node, which can be a site of metastasis. So what does the liver has to do with carcinoma stomach? Yes, liver, as we have already seen, is one of the most common sites of metastasis. Palpable liver in patient with carcinoma stomach is usually due to liver metastasis, and liver metastasis in patients with gastric adenocarcinoma are usually multifocal. Generally, they are not a single metastasis, but they are multifocal. Causes of jaundice in patients with carcinoma stomach. It can be due to an advanced metastatic liver disease resulting in jaundice, or sometimes there can be tumor infiltration of the hepatoduodenal ligament resulting in biliary obstruction. Other alterations in liver function test can be an elevated alkaline phosphatase, again due to an infiltration of the hepatoduodenal ligament and biliary obstruction. Sometimes it can be present in patients with skeletal metastasis, which still can occur in 10 to 15% of patients with gastric adenocarcinoma. Involvement of the colon is something we need to suspect in special situations. Common cause of colonic infiltration in patients with gastric adenocarcinoma is direct spread, and in these particular situations, colonic obstruction is a form of presentation where you have a patient with gastric adenocarcinoma infiltrates into the transverse colon, causing an obstruction to the large bowel. Rarely there can be malignant gastrocolic fistula where there is a continuous connection between the stomach lumen and the colon lumen due to the malignancy. In this particular situation, patient will have feculent vomiting and they complain of diarrhea immediately after food intake. These are all advanced or locally advanced manifestations of carcinoma stomach. Krukenberg tumors, a few words about it. It was first described in 1896 by Frederick Krukenberg. In general, in any patient with female patient with gastric adenocarcinoma, up to 1% can have Krukenberg's tumor. However, premenopausal women who have gastric cancer, up to 20% of women can have Krukenberg tumors. Among patients with Krukenberg tumor, it is very, very common in patients with premenopausal. As you see, up to 60 to 75% patients with Krukenberg tumors are in the premenopausal age group. However, it can still occur in the postmenopausal age. The median age of presentation in Krukenberg's tumor is generally 43 to 48 years. In any patient with ovulating ovary, especially in the premenopausal age group, the tumor cells can seed in that ovulated site and result in Krukenberg tumors. That is why it is common in the premenopausal age group. Krukenberg tumors can be synchronous or metachronous. If they are metachronous, most patients present within 2 years of gastrectomy. As Krukenberg tumors represent metastatic disease, the median survival is generally about a year. To conclude the presentation, a few paraneoplastic manifestations of carcinoma stomach, which are very rare. They can have a hypercoagulable state resulting in thrombophlebitis, so-called migratory thrombophlebitis or Trousseau syndrome. Cutaneous manifestations like diffuse seborrheic keratosis and acanthosis nigricans can occur. Hematologic manifestations like microangiopathic hemolytic anemia can occur. However, you have to remember that these paraneoplastic syndromes generally occur in advanced gastric cancer, not in an early cancer, rarely in an early gastric cancer, and generally they are not specific to gastric adenocarcinoma. They can occur in any GI tract or gynec malignancy. So friends, that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.